bhavatu sahano bhunaktu saha viryam karavavai tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace Peace. Om Bolo Sadguru Sivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Swami Vishnu Devananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Namah Shivaya. So we're going to continue with the topic of the 3 rarest advantages according to Adi Shankaracharya. We said the human birth, and then having a spiritual aspiration or desire for liberation, and then having the knowledge from a living lineage. So, first of all, we explained that the advantage of a human birth is that we have the discerning capacity. One of the advantages, the main advantage, is that we have a discerning capacity. So, the idea is that the discerning capacity, as we said, allows us to differentiate ourselves from experience, right? So we said if we just experience, then we cannot disentangle ourselves from the impact of what we experience. Whereas as human beings, gradually we differentiate between the intellect, or that which appears to be the experiencer, and consciousness itself. This is called the power of discrimination. The power of discrimination allows us to gradually separate ourselves from bondage. Okay, so we begin to understand this type of interaction is not good for me, it's not serving me, and we change it. So the whole point of the evolution of the seeker has to do with knowledge. So, and knowledge, we say knowledge comes from the teachings and the teachers. Because teachings by themselves are not sufficient. So we need people that actually live the experience, and they can directly transmit to us the teachings. This is what the yogis explain. So teachings, books by themselves are not sufficient. They have to be transmitted to us directly. Swami Shivananda says, from heart to heart. Okay, so now in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 17, Lord Krishna explains the great importance of the knowledge that we have in our mind. Okay, so this is called the yoga of the division of the threefold faith. And I would like to just look at the very beginning of the commentary of Swami Shivananda, where he explains the great importance of teachings and teachers. So, in verse number 2, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, threefold is the faith of the embodied. Right? So there is three types of faith, and we'll see how Swami Shivananda explains the word faith of the embodied. Embodied means those that perceive themselves as embodied. Right? So in the in our tradition, the embodied means the ignorant. Okay? Ignorance is not an insult in Vedanta. Okay, we don't have to feel bad that we are ignorant. It's not like we are being scolded. Rather, it is totally natural to be ignorant, but it means bondage, it means suffering. So those that are embodied have three types of faith. We'll see what is the meaning of faith. Which is inherent in their nature. Okay, so that faith which they have is inherent in their nature. Okay, the word nature is also very important. Swami Shivananda is going to clarify. The sattvic, pure, the rajasic, passionate, and the tamasic, or dark. Do thou hear of it. Now Swami Shivananda has a very long commentary, but in the very first paragraph he writes the following thing. He says, the whole world is made up, as it were, of faith. So he says that the world that we perceive, and the world that we perceive includes the perceiver. Right? So the world of Swami Brahmananda includes Swami Brahmananda. It's not that there is Swami Brahmananda and the world. What is called Swami Brahmananda, which is a mental creation, is part of what we call the world of Swami Brahmananda. Okay, what is nature? Nature, Swami Shivananda explains, is the karmic tendencies that we have, what we call vasanas. So the type of tendencies we bring with us to this life, they create the way that we perceive ourselves, right? Because all of us say, we don't have to say, but constantly we feel, I am, and then we say Swami Brahmananda, or whatever we say, right? But this, you see, the I am, and then the qualification of this person is very, very different. And that has to do with the vasanas that we carry in our mind. This is what is called nature. Okay, so now these vasanas, they actually project the vision of how we perceive the world. It's based on how we perceive ourselves. Okay? So the way we perceive ourselves generates the way we perceive the world, the way we understand the world, and therefore the way we relate to the world. World, not generally speaking, specifically. So for example, how we relate to people. How we relate to what is my fulfillment in the world, which means what does success mean for me. This is purely coming from the nature of the mind. Okay? So it's very beautiful to understand that when we open our eyes, so to say, every morning, we perceive the world as our nature projects. Okay, we think this is the world, but this is not true. Lord Krishna explains to Arjuna, each person has their own faith. And Swami Shivananda says faith here is in a very broad sense. It includes everything. What you understand of you, what you understand of the world with all its details, and your relationship with the world. This is all included in this word, faith. And then he says it's divided into three: pure, passionate, and dark or deluded. So then Swami Shivananda says the whole world is made of faith. What does it mean? Everything in this world is a creation of someone's vision of the world. Okay? So if you look at organizations, financial systems, whatever, everything that we have in society, technology, this is the vision of people of the past and the present. So the world that we perceive is a creation of faith. Also our world is a creation of faith, our faith. Right? So this organization is the creation of the faith of Swami Brahmananda, the way he perceived the world. Unity in diversity. Swami Sivananda's impact on humanity is the result of his vision of the world. The world is one. So each person has their own faith, their own vision of the world, and that vision they try to actualize in the world for good and for worse. Some visions are very terrible. Okay? So, but each person has their vision, and according to that, they act. Okay? So when we look at people and what do they do in the world, we see their vision. We see their faith. How do they perceive the world? How do they perceive themselves? And how do they perceive the relationship between themselves and the world? What am I here to do in this world? Is coming from this faith. This is the idea. We think we just see a world. That's not true. We perceive our own nature projected on the world. This is what we perceive. But we don't understand it. Now, Swami Sivananda explains something very profound. He says that those that have a more pure nature, their mind will, the way that they perceive the world, he says, will lead them to liberation. Why? Because the purity of the mind means that we understand the difference between bondage and freedom. So such people that purity is more dominant in their mind, they will constantly understand the world. This is freedom, this is bondage. Right? In the Katha Upanishad, one of the major Upanishads, there is a discourse, a teaching between Lord Yama, the Lord of Death, and a 5-year-old boy called Nachiketas. And Lord Yama is teaching Nachiketas, right? And doesn't matter the background, but Nachiketas tells Lord Yama, I want to know the self. Teach me about the immortal self. And then Lord Yama is beginning to test Nachiketas. So he's giving him a long list of toys, but very serious toys. Not just for 5-year-olds, because he sees, this boy is very special. He's asking for the ultimate. So he's beginning to test him to see how serious he is. And then Nachiketas is telling Lord Yama, all these lists of pleasurable things keep for you. Why? Because look who is teaching me, the Lord of Death. You want me to believe that I should take these things? So you are the monument of impermanence. Forget all these things. Teach me about the self. So he was a 5-year-old. So the idea is that when the mind is more pure, when we are able to discern between consciousness and the intellect, that the experiencer, we are not only experiencing, we are evaluating the binding nature of the experience. We can see it. Then our mind is constantly taking us towards freedom and away from bondage. It tells us, don't go there, go there. See, Lord Yama tells Nachiketas, the good and the pleasant are constantly offering themselves to each person. He says, choose the good. because they take to different destinations. The good takes to one destination, the pleasant takes to a different destination. He says, the pleasant takes you to my jaws. That's what he says. If you want to end up in my jaws, I'm going to chew you nicely, come. But if you don't want to come into my jaws, choose the good. He tells him, he warns him. So, so Lord Krishna says, when the mind is more pure, we are able to understand it. Life is made from freedom and bondage, and we need to learn to choose properly. Then he says, those that have a more Rajasic type of vision, they perceive the world as a world of pleasure and pain, and it's a place to attain happiness. The world is a place to attain happiness and security, right? And what do you need to do? You need to manipulate the circumstances so everything lines up with your desires. That's all. It's a simple project. Right? It will take, as Adi Shankaracharya said, 100 billion lives at least, until we realize the project is futile. Right? So the world is always made of pairs of opposites. There's nothing we can do about it. That's called karma. Okay? So the idea is that he says that, Swami Sivananda says very beautifully, when we have a more Rajasic vision, our faith becomes the handmaid of activity. The way we perceive the world throws us into action all the time. Why? We constantly try to manipulate the pairs of opposites. And this will never be successful. Of course, we need to do what we need to do, but we think that everything will be on the pleasurable side. And this will never be. Okay? So, but the more Rajasic mind, this is how it shows. And therefore it's constantly lost in activity, trying to fix the world, which is impossible. The world is of the nature of pairs of opposites. Then he says, if our mind is tamasic, he says faith is annihilated. We have no faith. We live a purely material life. We think this world is nothing but matter. Our faith is extinguished. Okay, so our mind becomes dark, becomes delusional, disconnected from reality. Then the idea is that, you see, what allows us to illuminate our mind, to get the knowledge. So the yogis say the teachings and the teachers are the cause of the illumination of our mind. Okay, so the idea is that when we come across a teaching, when we come across a lineage, teachers, then gradually the mind gets the right vision. When we get the right vision, our life is in a good destination. This is the idea. Otherwise, our life is spent on things which will not get us where we want to get. That happiness that our mind is striving for, we need to have the right vision to attain it. Otherwise, the very way we perceive the world is an obstacle for us to get it. This is the idea. It actually gets us entangled. Okay? Creating obstacles for us to attain what we want to attain. So, the great importance of the teachers and the teachings is that they are like, you see, it's very beautiful to understand. The yogis say, Everyone wants something from the world. Everyone. Whatever they want from the world, whatever they take as their ideal, is God. This is their God. Whether they call it God or not, they worship it. This is their God. And if we have a wrong understanding of God, not the actual ultimate, we are, by our own aspirations, we are creating our own bondage. This is the idea. So, therefore, you see, we learn in the Devi Mahatmya, one of the manifestations of the Divine Mother, Maya, God, the manifest God, is Bhranti. Bhranti means delusion. God is worshipped as confusion and delusion. We can see it very evidently. So the idea is we don't want to worship confusion and delusion because it's going to bind us. We want to worship clarity, knowledge, freedom, liberation. This is the idea. So for this, we need the teachers and the teachings to provide an illuminating knowledge for our mind. So all our vision can be set straight on that. This is the idea. Okay, otherwise, ... Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, peace, peace, peace. Bolo Sadguru Sivananda Maharaj ki jai. Swami Vishnu Devananda Maharaj ki jai.